I'm Jeffrey Trzeciak, and I'm the new director of the Newark Public Library. Very happy to be here working in the city of Newark and living in the city of Newark as well. Previously, I've lived around a bit. My last position was at Washington University in St. Louis, where I was Dean of Libraries there. I'm very proud of several accomplishments there, most notably a project called Documenting Ferguson. Prior to that, I also worked in Canada for a period of about 8 years, in Detroit for 8 years as well, but I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, and my family are all still in Dayton, Ohio. I have always wanted to be a librarian. I was very fortunate to grow up in Dayton, Ohio, as I mentioned, in a small and very tight-knit community of largely Eastern European immigrants. My family is all Polish. But we lived in a community that included Poles, Lithuanians, Hungarians, German immigrants. And we had our own branch of the public library there, the Electra C. Doran branch. Very small, two-room branch library, named for a very forward-thinking librarian at the time, Electra C. Doran. Every couple of weeks, my local school, would walk us down to the public library because we didn't have our own library at the school. We'd be allowed to check out 3 books, if I remember correctly. I was very excited by the librarians who worked there, and in particular a woman named Stella Jackson, who was still at the Electra C. Doran Library about 2 years ago. I think she had a history of about 50 years there. And she always made coming to the library an exciting thing for us kids, and I knew from the very moment that I went into that library that I wanted to be a librarian. That library was also the first place that I had a job. I worked as a student assistant there, and then eventually went on to the computer room at the Dayton Metro Library as well. So my local public library provided me with the resources that I needed to complete my studies, to learn more about the city and the community I learned in, and it provided me with my first employment. So it's the kind of experience that I had as a kid, and it's the kind of experience that I hope that we can continue to provide here in Newark as well. What working in libraries has taught me about the communities that we serve is that libraries are very important points of contact for those communities. They are often the places that we go to learn more about ourselves and to learn more about the communities that they serve. As I mentioned in my own experience, being from a Polish community, the public library provided a context for people in the communities, helped them to connect to each other and remain very strongly connected to those immigrant communities, but also helped them to adjust to their new lives, living and working in the U.S. They are important assets for learning, and they are important assets for bettering ourselves, for providing the foundation that you need for lifelong learning, and providing you with the opportunities that you need in order to be successful both in your working career, in your personal lives, and in your educational career. What has taught me most, I think, about the communities is that these communities are very diverse, and it's important for libraries to be representative of that diversity as well. I've always lived in and worked in urban environments, whether it's Dayton, Ohio, Hamilton, Ontario, the city of Detroit, St. Louis, and I have a real passion for these hyper-urban environments. I think that what we see in these environments is very diverse groups of people coming together, working together to better themselves and to better the community. I love what we see in terms of creativity that comes out of these environments, innovation coming out of these environments, the rich history that all of these cities have, and I love being part of this environment, this quilt, if you will, of different groups of people coming together to form a better whole, a bigger whole. And that's why I've chosen to work here and live here. So some ideas that I have for supporting and providing 21st century support services in the library are really around three themes. First of all, I see collaboration as being an incredibly important aspect of librarianship, and I will be looking towards partners in Newark for how the library might fit into all of the exciting things that are already happening here, whether it's partnerships with Audible or Rutgers Newark. There's a lot of really exciting things happening in the city of Newark, and I think the library should be part of that. We are a hub, and we should be helping to tie together everything that's already happening. Secondly, I am very keen on enhancing community, and that is largely through diversity initiatives, for example, whether it is representing diversity through our traditional collections, or doing new projects like the Carnegie grant that we just received, $1 million to help digitize content related to the African American and Latino communities here in Newark. And thirdly, I'm very interested in building on our collections. We have wonderful collections here in the library. Historically, we've had very strong special collections, particularly related to Newark and Newark's history. But as we all know, that Google is king in many ways, and these collections that we have will remain invisible if they're not digitized. I mentioned that I was actively involved in St. Louis in a project called Documenting Ferguson, which was a born digital project where we captured new materials being generated out of the protests that were happening in Ferguson, Missouri. I'm interested in how Newark can become, the Newark Public Library can be involved in new initiatives such as that. Well, it was important for me to live in Newark as well as work in Newark for two reasons. Really, the first being I wanted to live in Newark. I saw no reason to live anywhere else. And there were a lot of things that attracted me to living in Newark too. Newark is a very exciting place right now. There's a lot happening in the city, and I wanted to become part of that. But secondly, I think if you're going to represent an organization like the library, then you have an obligation to be part of that community, and it's important to live in that community too. I'm very eager to see more community engagement and involvement from the library. The best thing that you could do for your library today is become involved. If you don't know how, contact me. I'm easy to reach, J. Trzeciak at npl.org.